The alien races, or Xenos as they're known in Warhammer 40k, are some of the most unique and creative creations in all of science fiction, right? At least that's what we're told to believe by Games Workshop. But in a slightly twisted version of one of my favorite creators, the Fat Electrician, Games Workshop is actually really good at strategically transferring epics to an alternate lore. They're very, very good at getting things they need to fit exactly what they're looking at. And we've already talked about this with the Space Marines, which will pop up right here. Pause for a second so we can pop up the Chaos Space Marines right here as well. And you get to see a lot of where the ideas came from. And Games Workshop isn't really shy about that either. They're very open about all of the different things that they've pulled from in some cases. If it's different IPs, they will not say that. But history, they do talk about. So today we're going to talk about the Xenos Factions, where they came from and what inspired them lore-wise. And as we're getting going, if you like that little acronym I had, I've thought about putting that on a t-shirt. So let me know in the comments below. We may come up with a cool t-shirt with it, or we may not. We'll see what you guys say.
Like and subscribe.
It is almost Christmas time, and we've got some great deals for you on my website, www.tylertartar.com, where you can get some amazing merch from this channel, as well as merch from all of my book series that you can see behind me, and the books. We've got a lot of really, really cool different things you can get there, between stickers, and we had a custom knife done for one of my series as well. And with all of that, we're going to do something really special this holiday season. If you order between November 28th, which is Black Friday, and December 31st, which is the end of the year, you'll get 15% off of anything on my website. On top of that, you do get free shipping on anything over $60 as well. So make sure you check that out. Once again, that's 15% off anything on my website with an order, and if you get over $60 worth, you get free shipping as well. We do only ship to the United States for now, but if you're international, with the books, there's ways I can figure out how to get that to work. And the t-shirts, those will get shipped internationally as well. So make sure you go check those out, and let me know if you guys have any fun suggestions for merch or anything like that. When it comes to Warhammer 40k lore, the very first faction that really gets developed throughout the greater history of the Warhammer 40k universe is the Necrons. They have some depth, at least of the factions that still exist and are playable on the tabletop in Warhammer 40k. There are the old ones and a few others that aren't, and arguably the Catan were around for a lot longer, but the actual playable factions is the Necrons. And the Catans are now enslaved by them anyways, so still the same faction. But historically, that was also what Games Workshop went with. Their main inspiration that they pull a lot from is the dynasties of Egypt. There's a lot of the fantastical or fictional realities that were crafted by 1800s authors and poets of what they thought Egypt was like that leads into it. And to be fair to Games Workshop, they fully embrace that. They're perfectly fine with the fact that it may not be exactly with Egypt, which is cool. And because of the satire, they expand the dynasties and the faction instabilities and all that fun stuff to a whole nother level that really brings out that ancient Egypt style of existence. They also bring a lot of the death lore. Things like the Curse of the Mummy is also brought into it, with the Flare virus, as well as the resurrection of Necrons as well. So you get a lot of really cool stuff that pulls from history in a pretty unique way, actually. I do have to give them credit for that. The Necron lore, while pulling from history, isn't a straight ripoff, and I do really enjoy that. They are not one of my factions. I don't really enjoy them. I do own a squad just because of the 9th edition starter set. It's what I learned to play with originally, because it was just that squad-on-squad battle with my Space Marines, who have now been fully stripped and are ready for round 2 of becoming White Scars. I'm moving the Lieutenant around to work with some Blade Guard instead of the Assault Intercessors, and it's going to be epic. I'm so excited about the White Scars build I have and everything that's coming with it, but we're getting off track here. The other inspiration that the Necrons have is actually the British Empire, And this is seen a lot through Trazyn. Trazyn is a collector of everything and wants to preserve history because he doesn't trust anyone else to keep track of their own history, which is very common with the British Empire. The British Empire throughout its reign would often look at different groups dispersed throughout the world and watch them regularly deleting their own history because it wasn't convenient. They even saw this happen in places like Rome and in Paris, and they weren't okay with that. That's why a large portion of the museums in the world exist today, is because either the British Empire built it in one of their colonies, or they yoinked everything and put it in a museum in the UK, or later filtered it out to the United States or the rest of Europe, and eventually put a lot of it back in the countries after they started preserving it themselves. So this is a big inspiration for specifically Trazyn and a lot of his faction and his world. But that's enough about the angry robots. Let's move on to talk about the second oldest race in the Warhammer 40k universe. The Aeldari are another fascinating twist on history in the sci-fi universe. They're one that I didn't really fully understand until I started deep diving their lore recently, which is kind of sad. I've had an Aeldari army in my house for over 2 years now, because they're my little brother's faction, but I never really understood the depth of them. You often hear them referenced or partially sourced throughout the Horus Heresy or throughout modern 40k, but you never really get to see the depth of their fall. But the first time I got to see this is actually the book we're doing for a lore accurate list, but as I started deep diving their lore, it became pretty apparent pretty quickly which part of history they pull from. And they pull from a part of history that we've actually already mentioned, kind of. It's a part that's kind of loosely represented with the fall of Rome itself, but this time it's the full Pax Romana, including the separation of powers between the East and the West. And you get to see this with the large mistakes of the Eldar quickly splitting them between the Craft world and the Drukhari. And everybody left in between is kind of having to choose one side or the other, or they go full pirate, or they go full native, and go into the deep, dark hole that is the warp. And this also pulls in the Atlanteans from Greek legend, and we get to see a lot of that kind of masterful technology and fall from grace that we saw with Rome, that was talked about in the Legends of Atlantis, and many other things like that. It's a really fascinating story, and maybe we'll do a deeper dive on the actual fall of the Aeldari later on. If you want to see that, let me know in the comments below. But for now, that's where they focus. They are basically the sci-fi version of the fall of Rome over a long period of time, splitting into factions and sub-factions and sub-sub-factions, until you end up with the Harlequins, the Ynnari, the Corsairs, the Drukhari, the Craft world. But the Craft worlds are fractured into several different Craft worlds, and it's a very unstable condition where everyone's at their throats, no one trusts anyone, and they're struggling to survive at this point. And new empires have arisen to take their place. So that is the inspiration for the Aeldari. Next, we're going to keep going with the other old faction that makes up this trio of the War in Heaven. The Orks are your quintessential view of the barbarian as told by European myths and legends. They're the wild men of the mountains that seek to destroy everything and can never be civilized. Having a real space-based version of this in Warhammer 40k leads to this very deep, dark concern that every civilized world has. Every civilized country, nation, empire is always concerned that they're going to collapse either at the hands of the wild men, or they're going to become the wild men when everything falls apart. This instability and lack of trust and confidence in themselves often leads to their own destruction. And having the Green Tide actually bring this up is really, really fascinating. Now, there is some really weird orc lore that makes them almost Mongol-esque in the way they do things, namely the War of the Beast. It's not entirely true with the rest of it. I like to look at a lot of the more modern orc lore for what I'm looking at. And a lot of that is far more almost English peasant in some ways, depending on which faction. Or you do have some Mongol-esque or Parthian-esque or Hun-esque that pulls in a lot of different things, but they really play up the stereotype side of it, which is fine. That's exactly what we were going for with the Orks, and I love it. It's a perfect addition to Warhammer 40k, and honestly, I have nearly built an Orc army multiple times. I know I've mentioned that once so far in these videos. I have kind of 3 armies that I've almost built and are super tempted to build. And honestly, after some of the recent reveals for new characters and things like that at the last reveal show, there may or may not be a 4th. I'm a big mech fan. You can kind of see my Gundam back up there. And next, let's actually talk about that faction. Bring them in and loop them into what we've been talking about, so I can talk about the cool new miniatures that may be inspiring my next Warhammer purchase. The Greater Good is a fascinating tale that's ripped straight from Plato's Republics. They're a perfect example of the Greek city-states, more during the end role of these city-states when Athens and Sparta controlled 2 separate factions. We get to see mostly the Athenian side in the Tau, but we also get to see the Fire Warrior caste and some of the things they do, very similar to Spartans. So the Greek pull for the Tau is a really, really fascinating one. They also do tie a lot into Japanese mythology, including the way their armor works and everything that they do function-wise and societal-wise. They do have a very strong caste system, which pulls more from Japan than it does from Greece. But a lot of their culture and philosophy pulls from the philosopher states of Greece. Now, we also see a lot of the armor and things like that pulling from Japan, like we've talked about, including more modern Japan art styles with large mechs. That has been a big thing for Japan for probably about 50 years in the art styles and culture and video games and TV shows. So it's not a surprise that they would pull from there. But I do love how they tied in a lot of the samurai aesthetics into a lot of the different characters. Commander Farsight's one of the best examples of this. They even have the cherry blossoms behind him that look really good. That is one of my favorite models across the board. And because of the twins that were revealed at the reveal show, when you're watching this a few weeks ago, for me it was literally 2 days ago. But because of them and the Christmas box set and things like that, it's very tempting to get them and build a full just mech army. Go full battle suits, big mechs, get the 8 built for Commander Farsight, and just run big mechs. You know, I'm a fan of Imperial Knights. I have a Knights army that is only about a quarter painted. It is in the works. I'm actually building the last 2 armatures at my kitchen table right now. So as soon as those are built, we're going to be priming them and painting them along with the white scars. So I've got a couple of big projects coming for 2026. It will probably take me most of 2026 to actually get that painted. But while I'm working on that, I do have a main army that you see on the tabletop if you're in my gaming area at all, and that is my Leagues of Votann. So let's talk about that. As we start the new year, I'm looking to do something really fun on this channel that may be a little bit different for everybody. I am a professional author, as you can see by the first books in each of my series up there. I am also a Warhammer aficionado, which you can see from all of my armies over here. And the fact that you can't even see half of them because they're on the other side of the room and out of the screen. So I want to combine my loves for storytelling and Warhammer. So starting in January, we're going to be doing a new series on the channel called My Lore. This series is going to be about your custom Space Marine faction, your Votann army, whatever it may be. I want to talk about your lore, and I'm going to write a short story in it, and we're going to read it out and have a lot of fun with it on the channel. So if you want to do a lore-accurate army list based on your Space Marine chapter or your custom faction, your custom Eldari craft world, or whatever it may be in the Warhammer universe, let me know in the comments below, and I'll reach out to you on DMs to get more information on your factions. The very first one we're going to do is the Channel Army, which is the Night Wardens, and House Hestia, which you can kind of see some of the armatures. I'm still in the process of painting and basing those right now, so the big knights will be coming as well, and hopefully by the time we get there, they will be painted and we can do a full army breakdown with the actual knights that are involved. I make no promises though, that may be a little fast. Painting knights is going to take a while, and I don't know if I'm confident enough to tackle them yet as a painter. I've tackled some big stuff like Magnus, but that is a lot of big surfaces, so we're going to try it out and see what happens. I've done well in the armatures, so that gives me a little bit more hope, but we'll see. But with all that said, I want to know about your faction. If you've got a custom Space Marine chapter, if you've got just a Space Marine chapter that already exists, but you want to put your own twist on it, it's a separate company that hasn't been covered by lore, let me know. That's what I want to talk about. We're still going to be doing lore accurate lists. I've got a bunch of cool stuff coming for the Eldar. We've got stuff in the works for the Iron Warriors. Still trying to hunt down a book for that one. And we've got a bunch of other cool lore accurate lists coming that I am hoping to get out here pretty soon, either later this year or into the start of next year. But over the next month or so, I'm going to be collecting stories from you guys so that we can talk about them probably about once a month throughout 2026. If this is something you guys are interested in, let me know in the comments below. If you think it's cool, let me know in the comments below as well. If you hate the idea, let me know in the comments below as well. We've got a lot of really cool stuff that we're working on, so let's get back to the video so you can keep enjoying the show. The Leagues of Votann are a really, really cool faction that pulls from Norse mythology and mixes it with hypercapitalism that is often the fear of people today. There's a lot of different fears and twists between capitalism and socialism, and this really brings it to the forefront with the way the Leagues of Votann function and how trade-driven they actually are. There's even a lot of subtle nods to the Norse mythology in there, even going as far as the Votann. The Votann themselves, the all-seeing AI, almost hive mind of AIs that have their own individuality, are called the Votann. Votann is a kind of mispronunciation of Wotan, or Odin, as we'd say in modern English. The all-seeing father. The one who knows everything, the one who has seen everything. And this little twist is a really cool nod in my opinion. I like how it's close enough that it's pretty clear, but far enough away that it's still unique. We even get to see nods in the Urani Surtur Regulates, the faction that actually inspired my army, that they run their colors. It's a really cool little twist and nod to Surtur, the demon who's going to bring the end to everything in Ragnarok. But with all of that, Leagues of Votann are still pretty new, so we don't know a ton of the little things that they've pulled, and I look forward to seeing more of what they bring to the table.
Like and subscribe.
The Tyranids are actually a really fascinating one. They pull from a lot of ancient mythology and lore of the Great Devourer, or the devouring plagues. For example, locusts are a major problem throughout North Africa, and go so far as becoming almost mythical in Egypt, being the divine punishment from the gods. And the Great Devourer in Warhammer 40k isn't any different. It is a swarm, a hive mind, driven by only hunger, that wants to destroy and eat everything that in existence. And this is a really, really cool twist on a lot of the almost graphic horror that we see in Alien and all of those subsequent stories. Ultimately, the Tyranids are biological horror at its finest, with the environment reconsuming itself through the most brutal way possible. And I really love that twist. Unfortunately, because it's really hard to write a story from the hive mind's perspective, we don't have any deep lore on them. We just know they showed up and started eating everything, and people keep trying to kill them and they just won't go away. But we don't know any deeper lore to give you anything more here. And we even get to see this in the corrupting ways of the Genestealers. I'm going to mix them into the Tyranids here because they're kind of the same faction. Not really the deep lore that you guys would probably want, but historically the insurrection and corruption that comes from the hard times is something that is very common to world history. And tying it directly to the Great Devourer is a really cool twist that adds even more depth to everything we've seen and get to see. So let me know in the comments below if you guys think I've missed anything, or if you know of any other historical references that tie to any of the factions in Warhammer 40k. And if you've enjoyed this, don't forget to like and subscribe. We're currently working on getting our way to 1,000 subscribers and getting all the watch hours. So make sure you go check out the videos that are going to pop up right here. The top one will always be the one that YouTube thinks you will like the most, as well as a playlist of videos that I think you guys will like as well.